audience. Welcome to today's episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I'm one of your hosts, David Gilliland, and we have the privilege of having Kristin Barbato with us. And she's just phenomenal. She's a co-founder of, and I'm going to say this wrong. So, Kristin, why don't you just chime in and say it?
Dynamo Energy Hub.
Dynamo Energy Hub. So just think.
Or Dynamo.
Just think the place everyone's thinking about how we manage energy into the future and the transitions that we're going through and all of that. She's the hub for people all around the world, from smallest businesses, little startup ideas, to the biggest companies in the world, as they're trying to wrestle this challenge to the ground. That's her. And she brings a lot of passion to it. She's got a lot of energy in it. We're just so excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Kristin.
David, thank you so much. It's really nice to be here. And, I love talking with you about one of my favorite topics here. So thanks so much.
Well, we love entrepreneurs, and especially ones that are here in the seven-figure space with us, right? It's like we passed the million, we're going to 10, we're shooting to the moon, and we're having impact in the world. Now, the fun thing is we're all discovering new stuff. We're all still growing and learning. And Kristin, on this journey, and maybe before we get into the journey, where you're at there, can you tell us how in the world did you get started in this?
Yeah.
And then maybe start to give us little insights into in the journey. These are some things I'm learning now. This is what's real to me now, and these have really helped us in our expansion.
Would be happy to. So, of course, those lessons that you learn now almost look the lessons that you had before that you learned from that seemed insurmountable. That seems like yesterday's news. And then you kind of level up, and then you're thinking about, okay, now there's these issues that we need to tackle. So I think that's actually part of the journey that's been fun. But to just answer your question, I'll tell you a little bit about what Dynamo is and why the journey, how we got started and how it's been so far. So simply put, Dynamo Energy Hub is the leading global network for companies that are in the energy transition, or leaders within the energy transition. That means really that companies that are startups, that are very innovative, or large corporations that have been in this industry for a long time, different levels of investors, from seed investors and VCs to big infrastructure investors to government entities, all have been very active in the energy, sustainability, and climate space. There's one thing that's been missing, is that how do we bring them together? Because this is such a fast moving industry and so much change has evolved. Being able to work with one another to solve these problems is paramount. And that's where Dynamo comes in. And Dynamo really brings together these different types of stakeholders so they can build relationships, and mostly trusted partners in how they're going to do deals together, or all kinds of success stories that I can talk to you about our membership. But how we got here is something of a really interesting story, at least very interesting to me. So I'll tell you a little bit of that backstory. I am a co-founder of Dynamo with Mead Harris, who is a force in the industry. And it was several years ago, as a client of hers, she and I met, we're meeting up in San Francisco at a conference. And she said to me, I have a problem, and I see this problem in the industry, and you're going to help me solve it. And at the time, I had literally just started my own mini little consulting company. And I was like, I'm starting this thing. She said, no, let's explore this idea of how we can bring people together in this industry in fun ways that are really impactful. And here we are 5 some odd years later, actually growing. And so I kind of went from client to partner. But in the middle of this was this concept of, let's do these several different levels of service that we provide to help bring people together. It's networking events, it's thought leadership in terms of paper. We do summits, we do virtual events, we do all kinds of things, but mostly we're trying to bring people together and in really cool spaces around the world. So I'll get to that as well. Of course, we started with our first hub in New York City in September of 2019. And things are going gangbusters. We've had great events. Our membership is starting to grow. We're really starting to plant the flag and bring our community together. And then COVID hit 6 months later. And we're looking at each other going, did we really just start an event networking, co-working kind of business in the middle of a global pandemic? And yeah, that's the answer. We did. So credit to Mead where credit is due. She said, you know what? People still need to find ways to come together. So we launched very quickly and pivoted into virtual events. And to our surprise, we had so much engagement around the world. So our business model actually changed from let's set up a location and then bring people together in that location and set up the next location. Because of COVID, it had this very interesting effect on a different pattern of growth for us. And it helped us. I mean, we actually did grow through this period, which is very interesting. And it's because people were sitting around at home trying to figure out, how do I get my message out? How do I find investors? How do I find different clients? How do I understand what's going on in trends in the industry? And we provided that platform for it. So we went quickly from one New York City hub to, as we exited COVID and started emerging into, regular meetings, and the world had changed, but here we are again. We had a market driven pull for more locations, more communities. And now within 3+ years, we're in 13, 14 locations in the world, and we're international now. So that means that we've expanded tremendously with not only our team, our membership, but also the types of events that we have, the number of events we have, and in different locations around the world. So it's been a journey. And what was interesting to me is that through creativity and a force like a fantastic partner, we actually saw where we could take something that was really adverse and turn it into a positive, because other people were having similar issues and trying to figure out, how do we network and how do we find who we're going to do business with in this challenging, rapidly changing energy industry. And we brought our forces to bear on trying to solve that problem.
Wow, I love that. The pivot, the we have to survive somehow,
Right.
actually became the greatest marketing tool you could have ever had, right? To just pull you
Yeah.
out everywhere. That's
So just when you
fantastic.
think it's going to get really bleak, you get creative.
That's right. That's right. We also had a in-person events business at that time
Mhm.
that had
Okay.
to do a big shift, and how fun was that, right? And figuring that out and pulling in different people, and people who couldn't have participated before, even today, are part
Right.
of the hybrid events that they can't travel, and yet here they can be fully engaged. So really, really great. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, it was wonderful.
I'm just going to do a side note, and maybe this is embarrassing to you, but I don't care. It just keeps coming to mind. Uh, no one else knows yet on the call that you're an engineer, and the reason they
I
don't
studied
know
engineering. Yes, I did.
it is
I
the
was an
way
engineer for a while.
is is the way you talk. You
Mm.
talk like somebody who sees, engages with people, is just loves. And if I was looking for a co-founder, the way you talk about your co-founder Mead, and you speak of her with such praise and such lifting and holding her up. Um, I can see why she picked you as someone who draws people to you, who's so
Oh, that's so
inviting.
nice. That's
You're
very nice of you.
you're a natural community builder. You have a space for people, and I could just feel that. I was like, wow, Kristin's got this, right? The way you bring people in, the way you highlight their strengths, that's how they want to feel and be introduced. And I bet the community is just vibrant because of some of the culture you built within it. The
Well,
way you see.
that's very nice of you to say, and I'm really glad that some of that ethos comes through, because that's really what we want Dynamo to be, is a place for people to come together to
Yeah.
find others that they can work with that are complementary to them.
Hmm.
There's giant corporations that are trying to figure out what their energy and climate and sustainability strategies are and how they put them into practice. And then there's also innovative small companies who are trying to figure out, not only do we have this solution, but we want to partner with somebody else, so that those complementary skill sets, I think, are emblematic of what Mead found what we found in each other. So as nerdy and analytic and operationally minded as I can be, she's effervescent and sees like very big picture and has a wonderful network across the world. And I think that her vision for how she brings people together to create these communities is something that we've not only just bought into, but we've bought into it because we've seen it work.
Yeah.
And that's where I can help with the engine nerd in me and try to operationalize some of these concepts.
Well, engineered with a lot of passion and a lot of connecting, a lot of empathy, and like you could just see it. So
Oh,
wonderful, wonderful just to get to know you through how you talk of others. So let what as you've been expanding and growing, let's dive into this question. What are some things you've learned that you're
mm,
like, oh, this has been a treasure for us recently? Recently, we've learned this, and it has made a lot of difference for us because we all have these expanding teams, expanding
right.
vision, expanding stuff. How are you? What have you learned? Share a nugget or two.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think you nailed something really well in that it's about the people. And so not only the relationship that, you know, my co-founder and CEO Meet and I have together, but also the team that we've built. I'm going to go into that a little bit, but also our advisory board. We have a wonderful advisory board of people who have all different kinds of skill sets and are rock stars, and they're right. And we are really honored to have people who are such powerhouses want to work with us to help build this concept. So I think one of the things that we've learned is that it's extremely important, not only as you're building a community of people to work together, but to have those core people that are helping to guide you, and a team that is cohesive, that again complementary skill sets, where we feel like we're actually building toward a goal together. And I think that that's something that we have again in our built in our culture that we want to expand not only from what we do with our members and people who work with us, but our internal team. We want to exemplify that. I think it extends how you are. Actually, Mead has a saying. I'll keep calling on her. How you do something is how you do anything. So if we internally are a good cohesive team that is thinking about problem solving, that wow, we've got this growth mindset, and this now we have an issue coming up that we need to resolve, we know that others are going through the same thing, and we want to make sure that we're there for them. So I think some of those little nuggets is it's really about the team and the people. Another one that I might include is as we've been growing, again, I'm going to rely upon my little engineering background here. We've had to become more efficient with processes. So as you start to scale and you have a couple of hub spaces or a couple of people, or now you have like a dozen members and now we're nearing almost 100, how does that scale expose inefficiencies in your process? So one aspect of what we're trying to do, and it's a constant evolution, is how do we have sound processes that enable us to work together, but still stay robust and flexible as a team to be responsive to what changes in the market or even within our membership and how we're seeing trends happen. So I think it's not just the people and the collaboration that we're trying to foster, but a balance with process and flexibility. That
Yeah,
is important.
yeah. Well, and I love that. I love the saying, how you do something's how you do everything,
Yeah,
and we call those your core values. There's these guiding principles. That's the how you're actually doing the something that's actually influencing how you do everything, right?
yeah,
And identifying those and scaling those
correct.
and scaling the culture, that is a challenge, right? And
Mhm.
that the processes serve that flexibility, that nimbleness that your team needs. Another team may need another thing that it serves, right?
Right.
And just identifying that and say, how do we get the process to serve that instead of putting best practices in that actually undermine what we've created?
Yeah, I think one thing that we have had a challenge with, and probably other companies have as well, is that that fine line of is it too many steps and we're not being responsive enough, but yet we still need to make sure that we have a sound process in place so that we are small and scrappy and we still have several people who are wearing a couple of hats, that we are engaging with each other and in a very productive way, and not like one hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful, and you find these things out sometimes through trial. Team building is not easy. I've had a long career before starting entrepreneurship. I'm kind of a, maybe there's, I think I see this more, I think it's happening more and more, where experienced professionals are then starting their own businesses.
Hmm.
I'm one of those people where I worked in some of the most conservative types of environments. I worked in government, I worked in utilities, I've even worked in academia, and there's all different flavors of different types of innovation that goes through those types of industry or types of entities. Uh, but being an entrepreneur and hiring in an entrepreneurial aspect, it's different.
Different.
And yeah, and I think finding fit is both art and science.
Hmm.
So there's been a bit of trial and error, and we've hired some great people over time where it just wasn't the right fit for them because they might not be comfortable in a startup type of environment
Yeah.
and what that entails, and that's okay. And then how do you, as we've gotten to this threshold of 14, 15 people on our team now, still trying to be somewhat scrappy but very powerful,
Yeah.
dynamic, and how we do that is really a product of the culture that we try to not just bring about with our leadership, but within the team.
Yeah.
So empowering people to make decisions and seeing the success of trying something. And if it doesn't work, what did we learn from it?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's different, right?
Mhm.
It's not, you're not hiring a cog to fit into a system.
Well, we
You're
don't even know what the system really looks
right.
like.
You're
So,
hiring a team to design and build something. You don't even know what it is yet.
yeah.
But to get you somewhere that you do know where, roughly, like I
Mhm.
know the impact we want to have, but I don't know what it looks like to get there yet. We're going to build that
Loosely,
together. That's a different thing.
loosely, and we're figuring it out ourselves. But something that I really pride our team collectively in doing is engaging with our membership to find out what it is that is they need. So as we have networking events and we have speakers that are talking about what it is that they're trying to achieve in the marketplace, or others that we're pairing up to say, you need to talk to these guys. These guys just became a member and they are dying to talk to more people in offshore wind, or they're dying to talk to more people about what's happening in the built environment. Pairing them up and making these connections in person, virtually, through our member portal. There's all kinds of ways that we can start to make these connections that are so meaningful. And that's really where I think we see some of the little mini successes. We try to, uh, we're doing this effort in the last, I don't know, year or so to understand where our members' success stories are coming from as a result of being in Dynamo. And we've got an array of different kinds of small successes too. I met that person from that company and I've always wanted to learn about this thing, or I got to speak on stage about what my team is doing at this big huge project, or even finding a new investor, finding an advisory board member for a startup from this giant collage of networking individuals that we have, as well as some big deals that have been done between big members of our. We're like, this is fantastic. So the having those success stories, for whatever they might be, is very, very rewarding, and it brings people back around for more. So that's where we want to learn more from the market, and being this little engineering person, of course, in our marketing area, and what we're doing in terms of trying to figure out where the market's going, what data do we need. It's data, I think, in concert with constant engagement with the market and our members in it.
Yeah. But what I love is like in the change and what's going on, again, you're finding team members and in using them in a way, or enabling them to be the real eyes and ears of
Both.
the company. Right? Yeah, it's like I'm engaging and using. Absolutely. Right? It's
As I hope, and I think they are with us
and
too,
vice
right?
versa, right?
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is a joint
yeah.
thing. Absolutely. But it again, it's not you and your co-founder saying, how do we solve all the problems? Instead, you're fully engaging the team to discover the issues, come up with the right questions, figure it out, listen, learn. And that's the beauty of these growing businesses when we do it right. So
We
what
saw
great
something
insights are.
evolve very organically as we hired in a few more people recently. And there's now this with directors meeting that happens once a week without me, without Mead. Our director level team members get together and talk about what's happening with them, how do they collaborate across their departments. And it happened, I'll say organically, but through the leadership of some of the folks that we've hired recently. And it's amazing to see that, yeah, there's that empowerment, but at the same time, it, it's so beneficial and useful for not only their careers and also how we're growing, but also, what it is we're trying to put out
Yeah.
into uh, into the
No,
world.
so huge. For the listeners on the call, just imagine you've got 15, 20 people, and your team is on their own, getting together to identify and solve problems you haven't even played with yet.
Yep.
Isn't that what you wish was happening?
Isn't that
Right?
so cool? I mean,
What an awesome thing, right?
how lucky
that's
did we get, right?
that's the win right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we want to keep that alive as we go to 100 people. We
Correct.
just want to keep that going, right? And so that's awesome. And I love that you're thinking processes to scale that,
Hmm.
not just processes to make sure this bit of work is run through the system and tracked, but that processes to build that kind of innovation, that kind of growth, that kind of owning what they're in. And so, yeah, I love it. Thank you. What wonderful insights in that realm of growth and what you're doing. What challenges are you now facing? And maybe we could, kick around some ideas and work through a few things.
Sure.
What challenges are you currently facing in this expansion time?
Okay, it's great, and a few things come to mind. And I think what we're facing as a company in our stages of growth is similar to what our members are seeing as well. We're challenged with something that is new in the marketplace that we're trying to solve for. It's not a steady state kind of company. I mean, you look at utilities,
Yeah,
and it's a very steady state type of business model until the last couple decades, where things have really been shifting for them. It's the same kind of thing that's happening around um, energy sustainability concepts for any company, big or small, and governments as well as investors, all of them. So one of the challenges that I think that we're facing is, how do we make sure that we are staying relevant with the topics of the day that aren't just topics du jour, but are really meaningful topics. And that's where engaging with our members and having key thought leadership discussions, not just amongst ourselves, not just with them, but on display. And that's what we're getting at with some of our events and networking that we have. It's not always just throwing people in a room and saying, we have similar interests, go talk amongst yourselves. We seed those conversations with really thought provoking, timely insights from experts within the marketplace and our membership. So I think that's one way that we're trying to solve what's happening with the complexity of this fast moving industry. Another issue that, maybe I can draw upon some of the experiences you've had as you've talked to other entrepreneurs, is we are growing regionally and internationally. And how does that impact the scalability of our team, but at the same time, the experience for our members in different geographies, markets? Because our whole premise is we need to bring together the different types of stakeholders within the industry. But how do we do that as we continue to grow with the same kind of robustness? And I think we're doing it, but I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on what others have said about growing region to region and internationally.
yeah. I mean, what a great question. And And I'm going to just say the regionally and internationally only adds a little bit of complexity,
Mhm.
and amplifies the problems that we see when we don't do it right locally. And so it's this
Okay, I will say,
amplification, right?
yes.
And so let and I bring that up for those who are expanding locally. This stuff applies, and it's some of the work that you're doing, but you have to double down because we don't recognize of the cues that we have happening and the little moments and touches when we're brushing shoulders with each other more regularly
Mhm.
from those that are further away. And we also may underplay some of the cultural differences,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a great point.
there's cultural differences between Jersey and Boston, and, and, and as
Yankee.
you know, Texas and Jersey and or New York, some
Yeah.
real cultural differences. Well, it just keeps expanding, right?
Mhm.
They come, and but what's fun is that just like there's cultural differences that sort of happen in geographies, you can create a cultural difference, but your own that is alive, thriving, beating strong across countries. That's the Dynamo way,
Oh,
and
that's great. I love thinking about it that way, and I think
yeah,
that's what we're trying to impart, and some of the things that you just mentioned actually just spurred a couple of thoughts in me. One is, as we are growing our team, as we're growing our footprint, we are intentionally doing team meetings in association with some of these events that we have to bring us together
yep,
so that we have that interpersonal communications and exchanges. And we're doing this in different places so that everybody gets a feel for, wow, we're in San Francisco, we're in Texas, we're in Colorado, we're in the Northeast, we're starting to expand into the UK and Europe. How do we make sure that we're being relevant, not just as a team, but to those areas and those distinctions? So we're
that's right.
physically putting ourselves in these environments. The other thing that I think that you just sparked in my head was um, the the courage and the confidence to try something that might not work, but trying it small and then seeing how you can learn from it. So as you're trying something in in one place or in one process or in one marketing type of scenario, then what did we learn from that? And then how can we expand and scale from that with lessons? And it brings me back to a lot of the work that I've done in pilots and demonstration projects over the years. You want to set up metrics for yourself to say, like, how do we test for this? Not
Yeah.
just the actual result that we're hoping for, but what other lessons did we learn that will be
That are
amplified?
along the way. And
Yeah.
and as you go regional and as you go again international, the amplification of the problems that can be caused in a local level, but often covered or cared for, they can get out of hand rather quickly in a couple ways. One, we can try to over control. That's a big deal and a big
Yeah.
problem. We can over engineer what is delivered exactly all the time. So careful with some of that, and the other side is under control for. And so here's the fine line that I would say we have to remember is that at all times the number one job of every leader is to set the vision.
Right.
And I'm going to define that out as here is the purpose or the impact we're going to have.
Hmm.
And everyone serves this impact. And if you're not, I mean, just excited, jumping out of your boots to go and do that,
Hmm.
then you don't belong on the team. I don't care your skill level. It's even worse if they're highly skilled, highly competent, and they have a different why.
Okay.
They'll
Yeah.
tear you apart. They will build a different business from you, in essence. There'll be such a silo. All sorts of things happen as they get further and further away if they're not 100% aligned with the vision of purpose first. Second, the how you do something is how you do everything,
Yeah.
the core values.
Hmm.
And I don't want a core value list of 57 things and ways we go about doing things. I want to know really what do we hold true across any continent division.
Yes. What are
Okay.
those ties that bind, even though you may have
Right.
different cultural
Different
Um,
cultural ways of manifesting and doing this and that, but this is the driver behind it every time. And there's probably only going to be 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 of those.
yeah, that's a great observation or lesson there. And I think, in hearing you talk about this, these are definitely things that we are taking into consideration as leaders and as our team, our advisory board members, and always our members are keeping us
Yeah.
in check. What's new? What's different? What problems do we need to solve for? So I think that a lot of the problems in this industry are similar, but they have different nuances with geography, of
Yeah.
course.
That's right.
So that's where I think our business is serving such a good purpose in bringing together the people who are trying to solve similar problems, but with localized or different types or not even local. It's not geographic. It might even be
Cultural.
company or style or
And, yeah.
the differences there. And that's where people are building these trusted relationships and collaborating to get deals done or to work with. We need this perspective.
Yeah.
So that's being open-minded and having a growth mindset. Both, I think, are very important to not only our own growth as a company, but that's what attracts the types of members that we have that want to work together. So that's
And then when you start going across new regions and you're working with um, maybe one of the businesses is like Saudi Aramco
mhm,
or audio does a lot of investments of different dollars that come through or whatever else, and they're paired with someone from England that's going to be a great solution for them, and she is brilliant in what she does. There may be some interesting ways of saying, how do we keep growth mindset, openness, and yet a cultural bias that may be in there, in some gender roles and how those play? Well, there's ways to do it.
mhm,
Our way in the US would be the wrong way. And that's why we don't get prescriptive on the way, but we do get directive on the
on the
why.
goal.
Yep, we get directive on that. That goal is still there. Our core values of open mindedness and innovative and whatever else, those things, they're still in place. Now, within their region, though, the gathering may feel very different in order
Right,
to facilitate that connection, right? And your localized people can regionalize some of those things. So those may be some ideas or thoughts as you're
it's
looking
great.
at it, to think, lean heavier into the vision, and there are processes you can build around it
Mhm.
that can make it repeatable. We can ensure that we hire and really closer to science than to art on how to hire
Yeah,
people in line with that vision
right.
and getting ultra clear. Last thought, and then we'll kind of break off that may be helpful in this is, well, I'll do two. As your teams are dispersed, create things like you already have meetings. So you get together, maybe it's a virtual meeting or whatever. Intentionally create early times or late times of, hey, this is our water cooler chat time.
Right,
Okay. So it's
right.
like we're getting together and no. Agenda of the business doesn't start yet. We are catching up. It's time to laugh. It's show the funny little thing that happened. We want to have some kind of connection. Create it. Put it in there. Um, Building those things in can be a powerful piece. And then the second piece, I love that you get your team thinking strategically by having them involved in those groups and places.
Right.
Next, as they're off and away, do each of these new little teams have time and space together now to say, what about for our business? What's the strategic thinking? They're getting it just being around you and Mead right now, right?
Well, and the others that they are working with too. So
That's right. And the others are around. Now, can we build it into a process that we know every quarter or every month, depending on how fast the iterations have to be, are we taking time to get out of the trench, think big, bring in all this data we've learned from so many people and explore and dream, and then get tight around, so what are we going to act on? What are we
right,
going to build? So that each new member has that same vibrant feel of this is an entrepreneurial growing business even when it gets larger and larger. We do some simple things like we just have them go through like a SWOT analysis.
yes,
Just do it, and they're like, "But it looks the same as last time, does it?" Well, guess what? You still pulled out of the trenches for a bit to think broader and think about the external to
Yeah,
keep that vibrant entrepreneurial spirit. You can have multiple teams do it and feed their results in here. And now, when you have your strategic plans as a team, everyone in the company, even when you have 500 people, will be looking and be like, my fingerprints are on that.
that's right.
I could,
David, what we did for the first time last year was a strategic plan where we employed all of the leaders and then their teams
yeah,
to contribute here's our goals. This is where we're going to. How does your team contribute to this? What are your goals to support that? What are the resources you need? And where are the gaps? So then how do we work together? And that has been something that it wasn't just an exercise to check a box on. We developed a strategic plan. It's been inherent in how we assign work, what types of systems that we'll start engaging or implementing, how we're approaching different markets, and what types of needs our members have. So it's really started to um, it's continued to impact how we think towards goal, even though we
yeah,
have different roles. And I think one of the things that you mentioned that's so important is this is a core value for us as a company, and because it's what we do. Gaining perspective from somebody else who is different is valuable,
yeah.
and that's why we have the the incredible members that we have, and the team members that we have, because they understand. You can't, I mean, David, if there was 14 people exactly like me trying to run this company, it would not be successful.
Wouldn't go.
I have what skill sets I have and open mindedness, and that's great. But there's other people who are fantastic at what they do. For example, speaking of me being an engineer, I haven't had and especially working for um, companies that were natural monopolies. I don't have a whole lot of marketing background. So making sure I understand how do you market to people is something that has been newer to me. So I've had to learn and adapt and rely on others to help us grow in these different areas. And I'm really grateful that we have members who are attracted by that concept. We can't innovate alone. We can't scale with just one perspective.
Yep.
So those are some of the things that we do believe in, and I think that's what we're trying to put out into the marketplace in the world.
I love it. And I love that you're building processes around that.
Hmm.
That's processes around being nimble, about
Yes.
around
Yeah.
being responsive, about building vision, about change. Processes can enable it instead of hamper it. And I love that you're thinking that way. Well, time wise, we're running out of time on this.
Yeah.
Kristen, how would people get in touch with you if they're like, wait, this network thing sounds like a cool
Yeah.
idea to
That's
me?
pretty cool.
How would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, we would love to hear from people who are interested in getting in touch with Dynamo to learn more about how we network globally. Our big events, we've got huge events coming up with Climate Week in New York this year again, fourth year in a row, fifth year, third, fourth year in a row. There's plenty of ways to get in touch with us. Maybe a couple that just make sense is our website is dynamoenergyhub.com. And you can look me up in LinkedIn, Kristin Barbato. So happy to help there directly if anybody wants to reach out to me there. And we also have our LinkedIn presence, and that's where we do a lot of our kind of promotion of our members and our events and our networking and things that we're doing there. So we'd love to grow and see you on our social media as well.
Great. Thanks so much. That wraps up today's episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of the seven figure journey. Kristen, thanks again for being a guest today. We really loved having you on the show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to more.
Well, for all of you listening in, I hope you'll share, do all those things to make the episode more available to all the other seven figure businesses out there and their owners. Keep striving, keep learning, keep caring, and keep pushing towards your goals. Until next time.